I spent 3 days making my daughter's favorite dishes for her baby shower. When I arrived, her husband said, "We hired a caterer. Yours smells like old people." He took the tins and dumped them in the trash. My daughter just laughed. I drove home in silence. But what I did the morning after left them both speechless. My name doesn't matter. I've lived in Chesapeake, Virginia, all my life. Raised 3 kids mostly alone. Their father left when my youngest, Allison, was barely 2. He ran off with a woman from his job, and I never saw a dime of child support. So I worked pharmacy tech during the day, cleaning offices at night. There were nights I'd come home so tired my knees would give out when I bent to take off my shoes. But I always cooked. Cooking was how I showed love. We didn't have much, but I made sure there was always something warm on the table. My kids never went to bed hungry. I kept old family recipes. Chicken and dumplings, collard greens, sweet potato pie passed down from my mother. Allison loved that pie. Every year for her birthday, she'd ask for her own so she didn't have to share with her brothers. She used to sit in the kitchen and watch me cook, asking 100 questions about why I added a pinch of this or stirred a certain way. That little girl was everything to me. But something changed when she married Scott. From the beginning, I felt it. That distance. She stopped calling as much. When she did call, he was always in the background, correcting her, rushing her off. I remember one Thanksgiving 2 years ago. She brought some store-bought casserole and acted embarrassed by my food. Said things like, "Scott's on this clean eating kick, and can we keep it simple this year?" My heart sank, but I let it go. Then last month, she called and invited me to her baby shower. It was going to be in their backyard in Virginia Beach. "We're doing a garden theme, very relaxed," she said. "But if you wanted to bring your sweet potato pie, that would be cute." I remember that word, cute, like I was someone bringing a little party trick. Still, I said yes. Not just to the pie. I decided I'd bring all her favorites. I saw it as my way of showing her that no matter how different her life looked now, her roots were still here. With me. I took off 3 days from work. Shopped at 2 different stores to get the right ingredients. Started prepping on Wednesday. I made fried chicken, slow-cooked collard greens, baked mac and cheese, cornbread, deviled eggs, and of course, the pie. I even made 2 just like when she was a little girl. Everything was made from scratch. I packed it all into clean foil trays, labeled them neatly, covered them in foil, and wrapped each one in towels to keep the heat. That Saturday, I loaded up my trunk and drove to Virginia Beach. It was already warm by 10 a.m. I pulled into their driveway and called her, but Scott answered the door first. I'll never forget the look on his face. Like I was holding roadkill. "What's all this?" he said, frowning. "I brought food for the shower," I said, still smiling. He looked behind him toward the house. "We hired a caterer," he said. "We wanted fresh, modern stuff. Yours smells like old people food." Then he reached into my arms, took the top tray, and walked over to the garbage bin by the side of the driveway. He flipped the lid and dropped it in. Just like that. I froze. I thought maybe he was joking. But then he grabbed another and did it again. I finally found my voice and said, "Scott, what are you doing?" He shrugged. "We have guests coming. No one's eating this. You didn't check with us." Then Allison came out. I thought, for a split second, she'd tell him to stop. She didn't. She looked at me, then at the trash, then giggled and said, "Mom, don't make this a big deal. We're trying to keep things light and photo-friendly. The caterer has everything." I just stood there. My arms were empty. My hands still smelled like cinnamon and grease and hours of love. I nodded, turned around, got in my car, and drove home. I didn't say a word. Not to her. Not to him. Not to anyone. I didn't cry. I just stared out the windshield. When I got home, I took off my shoes, went into my bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed. My knees hurt from all the standing the last few days. My back ached, and something in my chest felt cold. Not angry, just empty. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30. I made a pot of coffee, sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. And I opened everything: bank accounts, retirement savings, insurance policies, my will. Over the years, I'd put Allison as my primary beneficiary. It felt natural. She was my baby. I removed her from everything. I didn't stop there. I took her off my medical power of attorney, gave it to Marcus, my oldest. He's not perfect, but he calls. He shows up. I hadn't seen eye to eye with him in a while, but he never made me feel like garbage. He still comes over to fix things when I ask. Then I pulled out a box from the closet. I took every picture of Allison and packed it away. Not out of hate, out of grief. The girl in those pictures isn't the woman who stood by and laughed while her husband trashed everything I made. And that's where I am now. No, I haven't told her. I didn't return her text after the shower. She just sent, "Thanks for coming. Hope you had fun," with a smiling emoji. She'll find out eventually. Maybe when the baby comes. Maybe years from now, when something happens and she realizes what she lost. But when she does, she'll know. I gave her everything, and she threw it in the trash. About 2 weeks went by after the baby shower. I stayed quiet. Didn't call. Didn't text. Just kept going to work, doing my usual. Every night, I'd come home, make something simple for dinner, and try not to think about it. But it stayed with me, how easily they tossed me aside. How casual the cruelty was. Then one evening, around 9:30, my phone rang. It was Allison. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, she texted, "Mom, can you talk? I need a favor." That was fast. I didn't reply. The next morning, I listened to her voicemail. She sounded stressed. Said they were having trouble with their daycare plans and that the woman who was supposed to help after the birth had backed out. "Could you maybe come for a few weeks? Just until I recover and we get settled," she asked, her voice overly sweet. No apology. Not a word about what happened at the shower. I waited 2 days before I texted back. I wrote, "Allison, I think it's best we take some space. I'm still deeply hurt by how I was treated. Please don't contact me for a while." She didn't like that. 10 minutes later, she sent back, "Seriously? You're really going to be petty when I'm about to give birth? Grow up. It wasn't that big of a deal." I didn't respond. A week later, Marcus called me. "You hear what's going on with Allison?" he asked. "No," I said flat. She posted something on Facebook about being abandoned by family and how her mother refuses to help her. "She's trying to make you look like the villain." I logged into Facebook. Sure enough, there it was. A long, self-pitying post about how she grew up without a dad and thought at least she could count on her mom, but even that turned out to be a fantasy. The comments were full of people saying how toxic it was when parents punish their kids by withholding love. Her friends were patting her on the back. Some I didn't even recognize. I didn't reply. I didn't comment. But I saved screenshots. Then it got worse. A week later, my pastor pulled me aside at church. "Sister Langford, I just wanted to check in. Allison said you were struggling emotionally, maybe feeling isolated." His voice was gentle. I blinked. "What?" "She said you might need some support. Maybe counseling." She was worried. Worried? That girl had gone from laughing while her husband threw my food away to painting me as unstable to the church. I was stunned. Ashamed. And then, finally, I got angry. She wanted to play this publicly? Fine. But I wasn't going to play dirty. I was going to play smart. That same afternoon, I booked a meeting with my estate attorney and added one more clause to my will, a notarized letter explaining why I'd removed Allison, with full documentation of her actions and behavior over the past year. It's not for revenge. It's for the truth to be known when I'm gone. I also sent an email to her and Scott. Short. Cold. Final. "I've seen your Facebook post. I've spoken to the church. The narrative you're spreading is false and cruel. I will not be manipulated, guilt, or lied about any longer. From this moment forward, all communication will be through my lawyer. I wish you both peace." A minute later, she replied, "You're unbelievable. You've officially chosen your legacy. Bitter and alone." She still doesn't get it. I'm not alone. I've got friends. I've got Marcus. I've got peace. She had a mother who loved her enough to cook for 3 days straight and drive across town with a car full of warmth and history. She laughed as her husband dumped it in the trash. She may have a baby now, but she's just started learning what it means to be abandoned. A few weeks passed in silence. I stayed off Facebook. Stopped talking to anyone who tried to bring Allison up. I needed space. I needed to clear my head. Then one day in early May, Marcus came by with his youngest daughter. He was fixing the sink in my kitchen, and while he worked, his little girl, Jada, sat at the table eating the leftover pie I'd made just for them. Marcus looked up and said, "You sure you're ready to hold a grudge forever?" I didn't answer. He kept working but then added, "You know Scott got fired, right?" That made me look up. Apparently, he said, he got caught using company funds for personal stuff. Allison hasn't said anything directly, but someone saw her listing designer bags and furniture on Facebook Marketplace. I think they're bleeding money. I shouldn't have felt anything, but I did. Not satisfaction. Just this strange, quiet sadness. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Not a card. A handwritten letter from Scott's mother. We'd never been close. I met her twice, once at the wedding, once at a holiday party they threw before COVID. She was always polite but distant. The letter was 5 pages long. In it, she apologized for what had happened at the baby shower. She said she'd only just learned about it from one of Scott's cousins. She said she was ashamed of her son's behavior and heartbroken that her granddaughter was being born into a house full of performance over substance. Her words, not mine. Then came the twist. She wrote, "I've seen how Scott treats people when there's no audience. I've ignored it for too long, but I'm not ignoring it now. I'm quietly consulting an attorney about helping Allison, should she decide to protect herself and the baby." That last part stuck with me. Protect herself. Up until now, I'd seen Allison as the one turning away from me, laughing, complicit. But now I started to wonder, how much of that was really her? And how much was her bending to keep the peace in a house ruled by someone like Scott? I didn't soften overnight. I'm not naive. But the idea stayed in my mind, growing roots. The next Sunday, after church, one of the older women, Miss Elaine, stopped me in the parking lot. "You know they've been coming to food drives?" she said quietly. "The husband don't get out of the car, but she comes. She's got that baby strapped to her chest." That hit me harder than anything else. I remembered being that broke, that desperate, when Allison was a baby. I remembered waiting in line at the church pantry and trying to act like I was just helping out, so I didn't feel the shame. I went home that night and sat in my chair for hours, just holding an old photo of Allison at age 6, grinning with pie on her face. She hadn't reached out again. Not since I cut off contact. Not even when she gave birth. But now I was wondering if she didn't because of pride or fear. Still, I didn't act. Not yet. Not until something else happened. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Unknown number. It was Scott. He sounded panicked, breathless. Said he didn't know who else to call. "Allison's gone," he said. "She left in the middle of the night with the baby. I woke up and she was just gone." I sat perfectly still. He rambled, trying to sound worried, but it came off more angry than scared. "She took some cash, too. My mom said she might have gone to you. Has she contacted you?" I didn't answer. I just said, "I'll call you back." I didn't. Instead, I waited. And a day later, I got a knock at the door. It was Allison. She looked different. Tired, smaller somehow, but clearer in the eyes. She was holding the baby, who was bundled in a thin blanket and sleeping on her chest. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood there. I opened the door wider. "Come in," I said. She crossed the threshold. And just before I closed the door behind her, I looked out at the street. Scott's car was parked halfway down the block. Waiting. Watching. But he didn't dare come any closer. Not anymore. Allison barely spoke for the first hour. She sat on the couch holding her baby, little Maya. I brought her a glass of water. She didn't touch it. I didn't push. I just sat in my chair across from her, silent, waiting. Eventually, she whispered, "I didn't know where else to go." I nodded slowly. "You're here now." She looked up at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not defiance, not coldness, just shame. Like the weight had finally caught up to her. "I didn't know what he was going to do," she said. "After the job loss, after the money dried up, he got mean. Not loud, not physical. Just controlling. Everything I said, he twisted. Every time I asked about bills, he'd tell me to shut up and be pretty." She paused and looked down at Maya. "He started locking up the baby's formula. Said I was overfeeding her. Said I was being dramatic. Then he called me ungrateful. Said I humiliated him at the shower by inviting you without his approval." I felt my heart tighten. "I didn't laugh because it was funny," she said finally. "I laughed because I was scared of what he'd do if I didn't." I stayed quiet. She added, "After the baby came, he left for hours at a time. No explanation. We had bills piling up. The only groceries in the house were from the church pantry. And last week, he told me I should go apologize to my mother and beg her to help," his words. "But he didn't mean it. He wanted to use you." I exhaled. "That I figured out already." She held the baby tighter. I packed up that night, took what I could, drove without stopping until I saw the Chesapeake sign. "I didn't even know if you'd open the door." I leaned forward. "Why didn't you call?" "Because I was ashamed," she said. "Because you were right. And I chose him anyway." We sat like that for a long time. Me in my chair, her on the couch, Maya asleep between us. That night I made dinner, just enough for the two of us. Baked chicken, white rice, and sweet peas. Allison ate every bite, quietly, like she hadn't had a full meal in days. After dinner, she asked, "Does this mean we're okay now?" I didn't answer right away. I took the dishes to the sink, washed them slowly, then turned back to her. "No," I said. "Not yet. But it means we're starting." Over the next week, she stayed in the guest room. She helped around the house, got Maya on a sleep schedule, called a women's legal clinic for advice. She even reconnected with Marcus, who came by with his wife to check in. Then the mail came. A thick envelope addressed to me from a Norfolk family law office. Inside was a petition Scott had filed for emergency custody. He claimed Allison was unstable, homeless, and hiding the child from his rightful father. He included a fake text exchange as evidence of her planning to flee with the baby long before any alleged abuse. He was coming after her. Hard. I handed the papers to Allison. Her face went pale. He said he'd ruin me if I ever left. I took the papers back, folded them, and said, "Then we'll ruin him first." I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. We met with my attorney the very next morning. Mr. Clayton had been my lawyer for nearly 2 decades. Handled my will, my house title, even helped me navigate a wage dispute years back. When I called, he didn't ask many questions, just told me to come in right away. Allison sat next to me, pale and nervous, holding Maya while Mr. Clayton read the petition Scott had filed. "This is sloppy," he said after a few minutes. "Poorly written. The attachments are laughable, but it's aggressive. He's going for full custody and laying groundwork for supervised visitation only." Allison swallowed hard. "What do we do?" He turned to her. "We strike first. File a response denying all claims. Attach a sworn statement detailing the coercion, the financial control, the emotional manipulation. Then we file a temporary protective order. And we include a letter from your mother and anyone else willing to testify on your behalf." I nodded. "You'll get all that. Whatever you need." We spent the next 3 days gathering everything. I wrote a 5-page statement. Every detail. Every interaction. From that first time I saw Scott dismiss her at Thanksgiving to the day he dumped my food in the trash. I included his exact words. I attached the screenshots of her Facebook post, the texts, even the voicemail from when he said Allison took cash and disappeared. Marcus agreed to testify too. He had seen bruises, nothing severe but enough to raise questions, on Allison's arms a year ago, and Scott had claimed she fell while cleaning. Allison's mother-in-law, believe it or not, sent in her own affidavit. She confirmed everything, said Scott had grown up cruel, manipulative, and self-righteous, that she had once witnessed him mocking Allison for her postpartum body. She ended the statement with one line: "If I had stepped in sooner, this wouldn't have gone so far." The most powerful piece, though, came from Allison herself. She wrote her own statement, 6 pages long. She didn't make herself a victim, but she laid everything bare: how she had let pride, fear, and pressure push her away from the people who raised her, how she had chosen appearances over love, how she had let her husband isolate her, and how, slowly, she became numb to it. She ended it with, "The day my husband threw away my mother's food, I knew I had crossed a line. But I was too far inside that world to leave. I'm out now. I won't go back." Mr. Clayton filed everything within the week. Then the real games began. Scott doubled down, hired some sleazy Virginia Beach attorney who immediately tried to subpoena Allison's phone records and medical files, trying to prove she had emotional instability. It was pure harassment. But Mr. Clayton wasn't rattled. He filed for a restraining order and got us an emergency hearing date. A week before the hearing, something happened that none of us expected. Scott showed up at my house. I was home alone. Allison had taken Maya for a walk, and Marcus was due over in an hour. I looked out the window, and there he was, standing on my front step in that same smug pastel-colored blazer he wore at the baby shower. I opened the door just a crack. He smiled. I figured we could talk. Just us. I didn't open it any wider. "You have something to say it through your lawyer." He leaned against the doorframe like he owned it. "Come on, you really want this mess? Court? Public records? Testimony? You think Allison's gonna win a fight she started from a guest room in Chesapeake?" Then he lowered his voice. "You want to know why she really left? Ask her what she did with the rent money 2 months ago. She's not the saint you think."
He was baiting me.
I didn't flinch. "You done?" I asked. He smirked. "You want to keep the baby here?
Fine.
But she's mine, and I'll fight until I get her back." I closed the door in his face. 30 minutes later, I had a Ring camera installed. I didn't tell Allison he'd come. Not yet. I didn't want to shake her before the hearing. But I wrote everything down. Every word. Because I knew the next move would be his, and it wouldn't be subtle. The day of the court hearing came hot and muggy, like summer was trying to show its teeth early. We arrived at the courthouse just after 8 a.m. Me, Allison, Maya, and Mr. Clayton. Marcus met us there, suit and tie, quiet but ready. Scott was already inside with his lawyer, sitting like he had nothing to lose and everything under control. The judge was a woman in her 50s. Sharp-eyed. No patience for drama. After the preliminaries, she let both sides present. Scott went first. His lawyer made him sound like a model husband, said Allison had left without warning, had a history of emotional volatility, and that the baby's safety was uncertain. Then came our turn. Allison stood up, held nothing back. She told the judge about the isolation, the financial control, the things he said when no one else could hear. She admitted her own shame, said she had ignored red flags for years. But when Maya was born and he began rationing her baby's formula as punishment, something broke. Marcus testified too. Said he had seen bruises. Described the change in Allison over time, how she'd become distant, scared, hollow. Then I was called. I didn't dress up fancy. Just a clean blouse, slacks, and flat shoes. I looked the judge in the eye and told her the truth. I told her about the baby shower, about the food, about how Scott dumped it in the trash without blinking, and how my daughter stood by and laughed, not out of cruelty, but fear. I told her I had raised 3 children by myself, that I had worked 2 jobs, cooked every meal, and never once turned my back on my family until I had no choice. Then I said this, "Your Honor, my daughter is not perfect. But she left that man with nothing but her child and her dignity. She came home not for comfort, but for accountability. She asked for help and faced the shame of what she'd ignored. That tells me everything I need to know. When we were done, the judge sat silent for a while. Then she leaned forward and said this: "Mr. Taylor, I find your petition to be not only without merit, but vindictive in nature. Temporary custody will remain with the mother. You will have no visitation until you complete a psychological evaluation and parenting classes. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to Family Services for further investigation." Scott didn't say a word, just clenched his jaw as his lawyer packed up in silence. It was over. As we walked out, I saw him sitting in the hall, alone. No wife, no baby, no audience. Just a man who thought control was love, and found out what happens when love walks away. That night, back in my house, Allison and I sat on the back porch, while Maya slept in her crib. We watched the sun set behind the oaks. The air smelled like honeysuckle. Allison turned to me. "I don't know how to make this up to you." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a piece of folded paper. It was a new draft of my will. Her name was back on it. I handed it to her without a word. She opened it, read a few lines, and started to cry. I didn't hug her right away. I let her sit with it, let her feel what it meant. Eventually, she said, "Thank you." I nodded. "Next time someone throws away what you built your life on, you don't laugh. You walk." And she did. Scott tried once more to contact her. Sent her an email a few months later, begging for a second chance, saying he missed his girls. She never answered. Instead, she went back to school part-time, got a job at a local pediatric clinic, and started rebuilding from the ground up. As for me, I don't cook as much as I used to. But every now and then, when the house is quiet and Maya is napping, I take out the old pie dish and start peeling sweet potatoes. I make 2 pies now. One for her. One for me. Because some legacies aren't inherited, they're rebuilt, one slice at a time.